Hi, welcome back. I am your host, your guide, Tom Van Ness. We're here for Guide Through Grief. It's the podcast that really just wants you to be able to understand there's no right or wrong way to go through grief. And my story and the stories of others that we look to share and talk about are perfect examples of however you need to go through grief is going to be the best way to go through grief. And so today is a topic that is one that will definitely polarize conversations. But I think more importantly, it will polarize your own mind as you go through grief. But before that, I want to remind our listeners and our viewers of who's with us here today. Bob Woolsey. Bob, hello. Thanks
How
for
are you,
joining
Tom?
us. I'm good.
Thanks
I'm
for
good.
having me on a
Um,
topic that I really like, which is gratitude.
Bob, Bob was a client of mine first, quickly then friend. And then the third thing I became close with Bob on was his gratitude coaching and his not even his coaching because I didn't even know he coached it. I was just drawn to his appreciation in life. And that was one reason why I asked him to be a part of season 1 was because of his approach and his attitude towards life and his journey is so unique in itself that we will sit down and have that as one of the episodes one day. But before we get into all of that, Bob, I picked us up a game. It's a game I'm going to keep for the podcast. It's one I think I saw on TikTok or one of the platforms. It's it's called We're Not Really Strangers. And they're cards. And we're not going to play the whole game because you got to draw cards and it's quick question stuff. But I always thought this will be a fun thing I'm going to start doing every podcast where we're going to pick a card and we're going to answer the question each. We could pick our own, um, but I just think our viewers and listeners would want to hear our answers for each. So, level 1 is perception, level 2 is connection, and level 3 is reflection. So, today's topic is gratitude in grief. Do you think we should pick the level based on gratitude and grief, like something like connection or perception?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, do you want to pick one?
Sure.
Okay. Never done this before. I just took the plastic off before we started.
The interactive portion of the podcast.
Okay, so I guess you ask me and I answer that question, and you're going to have time to think about it, I guess,
Sure.
before you answer.
If you were to buy me a present, knowing nothing about me other than what I look like, what would it be?
Damn it.
I think this one's relatively easy, but
A hat.
exactly.
I don't want you to get sunburned.
Well, and I appreciate the
And I
the
know how much,
support.
well, I guess I can't know much about you, but since I do know a lot about you, it would definitely be like sports themed.
There you go. Yeah.
So,
Your gift would be well received as long as it was not from a certain football team that will not be mentioned, but
what a horrible hat.
um, yeah, I think the challenge with this card is knowing nothing about me other than what I look like, because I feel like being that we're on like the sixth episode of this, I feel like I thought I knew you really well coming into this, and to know you a lot better. So I would say that not knowing you and buying you a gift, I would get you a unique pair of socks that had a unique saying on them because
I usually
socks,
do.
if you properly wear them, which is not with shorts and underneath pants, I can communicate a lot about myself that can be memorable in a pair of socks, and nobody has to be forced to read it. So it's like a properly placed tattoo that you don't want the world to see, but it's important to you. So
Mhm. And I
yeah.
normally wear those, like, if we're talking about perception of what we see. I've worn a lot of my fun socks around you. Today's, I
Okay.
think, maybe the first day I haven't worn,
Got it.
but I have some funny ones that, even though this is going to be streaming, I think their algorithms take you out for saying bad words.
Yes. I wore a pair for Easter yesterday that said it is okay to fart. And 2 meals, lots of family. It's nice to recognize that it is okay.
There you go. My mother-in-law gave me a pair that says "Ringmaster of the Blank Show."
The blank show. Yeah, it's good.
The blank is what sometimes we step in when someone doesn't clean up after their dog.
There you go. I got that. So let's jump into one of the topics I love, um, gratitude and grief.
Yeah. How can grief be the ugliest, scariest thing in the room when it's actually the one thing you have to learn how to embrace, love, and uniquely make yours?
My mom's therapist put it well when she said, "It's the gift of the hell. It is your superpower because once you overcome it, no one can take that journey away and the power and the grit that it gives you. So the farther along in your journey you go, I think the easier it is to be grateful for it.
I agree.
Um, I think early on, that's a muscle that you can build through journaling. You can build through, if you are a single parent, asking your kids what they're grateful for at the dinner table, creating some level of cadence of finding out what you, through journaling, or others through, making it a consistent tradition, can really build that, in little steps, that muscle of gratitude. So tell me about
So,
your.
well, before we get into me, so did you, I'm going to throw it back on you. So
Sounds
you're
good.
so strong in the gratitude world now. Your grief journey started at such a young age. And I know we're not going to turn this episode into into that journey, but it started when you were in your early teenage years, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
16. So
16. So did you start something then that just continued to carry on today in your gratitude practice, or was it later in life where you started to recognize a certain practice that got you in the gratitude mindset?
so I will say I'm 51 turning 52, and it's probably been in the last 8 years that I've really embraced an intentional gratitude practice, and that's because of mentors that I've had that and it I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, gratitude, I mean, all you have to do is Google it, and there's lots of research. There's just a ton of articles. There's a ton to read about the power of gratitude. So I think science has caught up. I will say I was 16 when my dad committed suicide. I was in high school, and I remember being on a retreat weekend where I gave the prodigal talk. It was Teens Encounter Christ, and a young man who was a year younger than me that I had grown up with. And I shared the story about, my dad passing away and how that affected me. And he said to me, and it was a really powerful statement when he said, "It's hard for me to feel guilty about my situation with my parents getting divorced and my life kind of being ruined at a young age because of that when your dad's dead." And I told him, from birth to 16, I grew up in a household where I knew that my father loved me and my father loved my mom, and that I was extremely grateful for that. And at that time, I could not have imagined growing up in a household with parents that didn't love each other. And so I think I was naturally wired to think that way, from an early age. I think you're kind of born with the rosy glasses or not. Having 3 kids, a couple of them have rosy glasses, a couple of them don't. I guess it depends on the day. So I do believe that I was wired to recognize things to be grateful for. However, 16 to 52, there's been some major ups and downs. And there's been times where, like I remember when I got married, and it was like I was grateful my dad's best friend showed up, but I was pretty sad that my dad wasn't there. So,
Mm,
I think it's a matter
yeah,
of weaving in what you can be grateful for, and at the same time recognize that there's just going to be some suck.
yeah,
And I always tell people when I go through a receiving line at a visitation or a funeral, I say it sucks. I'm sorry, and it's okay to embrace the suck because that is the place that a lot of times you need to be, and you can be grateful for the grief, the suck, the all the the crap that goes along with the loss, and again, embrace that gift of the hell, and know that when you are on the full other side, and that becomes your superpower, nobody can take that away.
yeah. And that's you said so many great things and all of that, and thank you for sharing first. Um, Anytime we share those moments, especially as far back as they go, they can rip off a scab or a feeling, but I think to what you said, they also then create those moments that we can appreciate and be grateful for. And um, that's not the inspiration for this episode. And we talked about in an earlier episode about resources in our distractions from our grief. And podcasts at times were a healthy distraction for me. And they became a healthy thing when I started to create this idea. And one podcast that was the inspiration for this particular episode was Anderson Cooper's podcast that he has on grief. And it's not a political podcast. Yes, he's an anchor on CNN, but he sits down with some amazing people and has amazing discussions of grief and their grief journey. And one he has is with Stephen Colbert. And they talk about how at first grief is Stephen Colbert, I think in a book, he talks about on the interview how grief is like a lion or a tiger. I think like a giant tiger that will maul you and rip you apart unless you understand it. And the longer you're around this tiger, the more you start to love it and appreciate what it's done for you and growing you into the person you've become and the appreciations that you have, but also respecting the fact of what it can do to you and ripping you down to shreds because of the experience it put you through. And I think it was just such an amazing episode in itself to listen to and understand. And if you haven't, just um, Googling or going to your favorite podcast platform and looking up the Anderson Cooper Grief podcast. I think it's in season one. And then he touches on it again in season two, but it's a phenomenal one. It was also in that podcast series where I think they brought up that, and I made a note on it, so I'm just pulling up my phone so I don't get it wrong. One thing he tried to do was learn how to tackle grief because it's the one emotion the entire human population goes through. There's not one other thing we as a human race share outside of grief. We can choose not to love. We can choose to hate. We can choose to do everything in life, but we don't get to choose to grieve.
Well said. And I remember you sent that podcast link to me early on, and in this everybody's hair's on fire political climate, one thing that I took away from it was whether you like Anderson Cooper or Stephen Colbert and the personas that they have out there, what's refreshing is they're human beings who have gone through something extremely similar to me that I can relate to. And I think that so much of our grief journey is important to link up with others that have gone through something similar, find if they've written a book, read their podcasts, follow them, and just be aware that we're all human and
Yeah.
doesn't matter what we do for a living. There are a lot of people out there, and it brings me to the grief share, which I don't know that it existed. Maybe it did back when my dad passed away, but I know it's been something you've mentioned a lot.
Yeah.
And tell me about grief share, a little bit what it is and how it relates to the gratitude and grief and things that
Yeah.
you learned because I know it was important.
Yeah. It served so many valuable purposes in the 12 weeks I went to Grief Share. And I can only hope every Grief Share group has this kind of reaction within you. Okay. They're all going to be a little bit different because they're hosted at different places by different people. Um, but for me, it started to almost like the person that came up and said to you, I went into these meetings every week thinking, gosh, darn it. I gotta I gotta raise 2 kids, I gotta manage a house, I gotta do all these things, and they want me to come sit down for like 3 hours, like, and talk about other people's stuff. I got enough going on. But I walked out every week like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so happy I went. I'm so happy I learned other people's stories." And not because their story was worse or better than mine, but it was a place where we could all walk into together and have a gratitude for each other, where we didn't have to worry about saying the right thing or responding the right way. We were all just there, support beams for a couple hours to make us appreciate the communal support that was out there at that church in the community amongst us at so many different ages. And when you do hear the other stories of what's going on and what people have to battle and go through, there are a lot of things in my scenario that positioned us in one of the best case positions, I guess. I guess that's the way you put it. You know, Leslie and I had good financial jobs and were well positioned. We have very engaged family. We have amazing friends. The boys are at an amazing school. We have a lot of things there for us to be grateful for. And for me, it was hard to feel sad or put myself in the dumps when for 5 months, 4 days a week, meals showed up at our house. What the hell? I mean, like, I, we said in an earlier episode, we thank God every night for taking Leslie and placing her by your hands at the gates of heaven. We couldn't be any more grateful. Like, we want her so much to be here. To your point earlier, it's like, it's so gut wrenching that she's not here to watch me cross the finish line this weekend in my first half marathon. So gut wrenching not to see the boys graduate high school, get married, score goals, smile, play with friends. But the father I am, the children the boys are to me, the grandchildren the boys are to her parents and to my parents are all a direct reflection of the impact she had on her. And I will take every moment we had of that instead of nothing at all.
Amen. And I look at it and say that there's so much that has come out of the loss that people have risen up and shown you things that you would have never known this person was capable of this, or this person was capable of this, or that were capable of what you've been capable of. I mean, the impact of Leslie's death has been super powerful and has, the butterfly effect, that ripple that's changed the world.
Mhm.
And it sucks. And you can find a place to be grateful that, wow, like
Yeah.
make a list some night, like when you're alone and the boys are at a sleepover and you're like, oh, pull out a sheet of paper and write down everything good that's come out of since she passed. And I bet you'll be able to fill books and you'll be
Mhm.
like, well, I hadn't thought about that. These are all things that happened because of it. And again, the gift of the hell, you would change it today if you could. However, immersing yourself in the gratitude of what's come from it, I think is really the easiest place to be grateful. It's easy to be grateful for what people did for you, in the worst times, and just to sit back and
And I think that's the
spend time.
training too. I think to your point, like there's some people that can naturally see the glass half full, and there's some people that are going to naturally see the glass half empty. Because there can be people sit here that say, "Yeah, I got this, this, and this," but they're still gone.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
and that's fair.
Yeah, like, and I'm not like that. That is,
That's real.
yeah, that is real, and every situation's different. The support that person that they had together is different, and um, there are days I don't feel like that. Still are. There are days I just wake up and I'm like, they need to get the edit button. I'm like, "Fuck you. I don't want to be here today. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to talk to anyone." There's been days where like a song comes on early in the morning. I'm big into music in the first part of my day, and a song will come on that takes me back to thinking of Leslie, and it it has put me in a spiral for like 6 or 7 hours. And I will sit there and just cry. I will. In fact, I meant last time this happened, I couldn't have been any more aware of what was happening. A Zach Bryant song came on, Pink Skies, and it talks about you'd be so proud of your boys grown up, showing up at a funeral. Like it talks. It's just it's poetically heartbreaking. And I started crying in the shower when that song came on, and I think I listened to it 3 or 4 more times on repeat, just standing at the counter in the mirror, sobbing. And this is just a couple months ago. And I like call a friend and I'm like, I let this song ruin my day. Like I don't want to go do anything today.
So what did you do?
I didn't do anything the rest of the day.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it was one of the first times I decided, yeah, I sat around. I think I folded some laundry. I took a walk. I went and like sat down at a restaurant for lunch, which I don't do a whole lot. Um, like did I called my boss. I was like, I'm taking today off. Like I can't. I'm not there. And but that's it was the next day that was almost as important as that day because you have that moment to reflect of like, gosh, I remember all those great things I got to have with her.
And yet, probably in your first year, you didn't give yourself the space to do that. And you're at a place where now
I
it's
cried and
like,
went on like I
yeah, I
cried
can
and
do
had to.
this.
It wasn't even I can do this. It was like a cry, and then it was like, Dad, make us breakfast, and it was just a wipe it
Survival.
dry and go.
Yeah.
And that's
Survival mode.
yeah, and that's now having the moments to appreciate it. And I know we've talked about it off camera. I feel like we talked about it in another episode or teased it probably to this episode, but it's what the practice of gratitude has done for me at this point in my journey is to understand and appreciate the word
Hmm.
and I think I talked about this in another podcast I sat on, and maybe with you in another time. I've talked about it with my therapist a lot too, but and has taken on such a different meaning now in grief. It's a word that we threw in because we didn't know if we could use a comma or not. And is now something where I use to describe the balance of grief and joy, where I can be really sad that it's gone and not experiencing. Well, let's use my race for example. I'm running a half marathon in Nashville this weekend. It's my first one. I've never ran this far in my life. In fact, I was never a runner till about 5 months ago. It hit me last week. I'm gonna have no one when I cross the finish line. I, I won't have Leslie to call and say I got it. She won't be there to just say I'm so proud of you for finishing it. And I can still be happy that I was able to do this all on my own without her. It was because of who she was and who she saw in me that I can feel really happy. She, 4 years ago, got me to quit smoking. Um, Big smoker. Hid it from her for a lot of times too, but that's a different story another day. But and that might not be the best example. I think one that's going to inevitably come down the road here is companionship in another partner. And so I guess in putting some notes on how I have it in my notes is the best way I can use to describe and is probably in a relationship with someone else that I can be really sad I am not married and with my wife anymore because of her passing. I I can be sad we're never going to get to 50 years of marriage. I can be sad we're not going to see our kids walk down the aisle. But there's an and to all of that. And I can be joyful that I might have a chance to meet someone else and that that person will be able to be there for me as a partner. And that what Leslie did for me in making me the person I am is going to make me a better partner for that person. That person is going to get someone so much better than I even knew was available because of what I knew she did for me. And that's holding grief and gratitude together in the mind. I think it's a really hard thing to do until you are kind of forced to be in a position where you can sit in it of losing a spouse, a parent, um, someone close to you. It doesn't have to be just a spouse or a parent. Profound grief is profound grief, and um, I'd even go to say like, I had a dog for 11 years. I'm still not ready to buy another dog. We put that dog down 20 years ago, but there's other animal owners out there that lose their pet and they get another one at some point, and they're sad they don't have their prior pet, but they love their other one so much and they have that healthy balance. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of the gratitude. Sorry, I got off there a little bit. Wrapping up the power of the word and maybe some of those examples weren't the best, but how I wrote it down in my notes where the power of the word and is to feel grief and embrace it and to find joy in the day and moment that I'm in now. Because there's going to be moments where I have to allow myself to be happy. My boys deserve that from their father. I, in a way, deserve that for myself. And it probably goes in that reverse order. If I can't find that joy for myself, it's really hard to do that for my boys.
It's kind of like putting on your mask first in the airplane,
Great example.
your oxygen mask, and then helping others. And really, I think that's relevant here
Yeah.
is if you allow yourself the joy, the happiness, the sad as it is to say, the moving on in some places, it allows you then to provide oxygen to others, which you've got a lot of oxygen to provide to others. You got to keep it for yourself tomorrow for the race,
Hmm.
but tomorrow? No, Saturday.
Yeah.
This weekend for the race. But
Great.
no, I think that's very well said. And another thing that you wanted to wrap up was just everybody's on a different spot in their journey, and everybody's journey is slightly different.
Hmm.
So, how do you weave gratitude and patience for yourself, or an understanding that you know everybody's in a different spot and it'll come? Sometimes it just doesn't come right away.
Yeah, I your pace is going to be your pace. We joked about the race, but that's um I can relate it to running. There's I'm going down and running with a friend this weekend who runs at like a 9 minute to 9 minute 15-second per mile pace. I'm running at like 8.5 minutes or a little bit, 8:20 to 8:30. And we're both going to finish that race. And we're both going to finish something that less than 5% of the world population has to experience. So as long as we cross the finish line, like we're good. And I think that's the same attitude that you can take in grief, especially when it's finding a gratitude for it. Um, you're going to need to do it at a pace that you can be happy with, that you're not measuring up to other people's expectations. And that's where I got in the most trouble. The Dave concerts I went to were a way for me to go away from where people around me didn't see me being happy again. I could go to a concert of a musician I really liked, hearing music I really loved, and I could smile and dance, and there wasn't anyone around me who knew me. And I was taking like one friend with me that I hadn't seen for years, because it felt safe because we were good enough friends or we hadn't seen each other for so long. Like, who were they to judge me? They just wanted to be there to support me. I knew they were that kind of friend. Um, so I think what kind of hurt after all of that is, um, I guess I'm glad I have the Dave concerts that kept me sane, that kept me happy, that kept me like for a reason to wake up tomorrow kind of thing. Um, but is sad that I felt so compelled to hide it. Like people know I was going to the concerts, but like the level of what I was hiding, my own emotions and process was just like it felt um I definitely felt the influence of others on part of my process through grief. And not that it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It is what it is. But I think you have to be comfortable with your pace. And there were times where I found myself being further ahead than I wanted to be. and at times that was easier to draw back on than others. But I think as long as you can recognize it, that's the win. Um, because it's you go and you go and make some huge decision and get years down the road, that's where you start to damage other people, other lives, other things. So be comfortable with your own pace. If someone's pushing you to go faster, be slower, do something different than what you're comfortable with. Um, you have every right to think about that relationship as you're thinking about your grief journey, because the grief journey needs to come before someone pushing you off the ledge you're not ready to jump. So,
Yeah, I think that's well said. My mom, who's 77, has run many half marathons at Nashville. That was her favorite. And where she started to find true joy in running is when she stopped comparing herself to others and just ran her race and saw the parts of Nashville that she enjoyed and embracing the joy that she could have experiencing that race for herself and not worrying about what pace or what the finish line looked like or what the time was. And I think that it's interesting that, you've got that right ahead of you this weekend because that is exactly, I would say, the advice that's coming out of this, which is run your own race, run it at your own pace, and really immerse yourself in it and be grateful for the journey, good and bad,
yeah.
because it's your journey and nobody else is going to take that away from you.
I can't wait to have my friend Joey on for an episode in a later season to just someone to interview. He's one of my friends that have been around here. He's running with me this coming weekend in
Sweet.
Nashville. He's also the neighbor that's gone to like 5 or 6 Dave shows with me. And like he couldn't be anything opposite. Like he is the exact opposite of your typical Dave. Like he never been to a Dave show before. He likes more heavy metal.
Really?
Yeah, and he's gone to
Okay.
like 6 Dave shows with me now. So um but yeah, he's been one of those individuals that has like just been there alongside, that has been like that kind of we talked about in a prior episode. I think it was with the distractions, someone that's kind of there to steward you along. He's been that kind of fella, and definitely one of the reasons why I have kind of that more glass half full mentality with people like him that's been around in my life, and uh, looking forward to running with him. And he makes he hasn't made a lot of fun of me. Like we've done it jokingly. I more started with myself. We say it on running. We'll wrap this up. For those that might know who Richard Simmons is, okay, that's the kind of runner I am. That's how I describe myself. And I really don't care what people think of me when they see me running. So I started running in November. So I've been doing a lot of running in a gym on a treadmill, which is miserable. If you can avoid running on a treadmill, do it. Because like running 8, 9, 10, 11 miles on a treadmill is not fun. But I craft every run has a personally handcrafted playlist of music that I gotta have. And I kind of time out the songs of where they'll be. I like to have them pretty close. But I'm sitting there running. I'm like running my arms. And I'm like, just all hype. And there'll be some songs I'll be rocking it on the treadmill or running through the streets, or I'll like bounce off of a curb or jump off like a light post, like I'm Kevin Bacon and what Footloose, right? Like where he's like, just like run down the street. And I'm in a place where I am like so comfortable with myself. And it's that runner's high. It's that being comfortable with myself of where I'm at. And I don't, I goes right back to, I wish I was running home to Leslie,
Sure.
because I know if I was, she wouldn't believe that I've been running like this. But she'd have something like a glass of water ready for me, and like the apple I would wash and cut up and have some peanut butter with when I got back from my run. She'd probably have that ready for me. And she'd ask me how it was or what my route was, and it would be just a it's not that it would be a beautiful conversation. It would just be it'd be a beautiful conversation I'd love to have once.
Yep.
I really would. And um I get to have it with Joey. A lot of the times because we run together. He told me, he goes, Tom, I know you're going to finish before me because we're going to run at our own pace. Like he doesn't want me to slow down. I don't want him to speed up. He goes, Tom, just wait for me once you get across the finish line, and I will give you a big old congratulatory hug. You know, um, so like there's of course things I wish, and it's hard to think that I'm like happy. I'm not happy about any of this happening, but what I found this race to be was finding a joy in knowing I had the dedication that it took to show up for myself because that's what she would have wanted me to do. And this was now the time in my grief journey where I had to start stepping up for myself to show myself that I can do it.
Awesome.
So there we go.
Thank you. And good luck.
Thanks. Wipe away those tears. And we're going to say goodbye. Thanks so much, Bob, for playing the game with me today. You can find it online. We're going to play it with our next episode and with future guests. We're not really strangers. Do you really know your best friend? How well do you know your mother, sister, or anyone else close to you? Why Not Really Strangers is a purpose-driven card game that these guys aren't paying me or sponsoring me. Why am I reading this? I'm Tom Van Ness. I'm your host, Guide Through Grief. Be happy. Get through your grief your own pace. We're going to see you in the next episode, and we're going to talk about some other things. I appreciate you. I love you guys. Bob, thanks again for being here.
Thank you, my brother.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope today's episode will help guide you forward. My goal for this podcast has always been to create a safe place for people who are navigating their grief journey to lean on one another and share their own experiences. I ask that you share, subscribe, like, and comment so we know how to best support you. Finally, we rely on listeners like you to help keep this journey going. Guide Through Grief is dependent on the support and contributions from you. Please consider supporting the show and our cause. Visit our social media pages or click the link in our description for more information. Thank you.